Halika. Good morning guys. At nakaroon sa cruising tour sa may Longquart. Natakar may agad din sa Lobster, James and Hook. Ito tagikan ganina sa may bridge. Hindi rin natakaran. Oh, nakapalit siya yung device. Oh, may ito.
Tax free.
Magyan nato at tumuwa. Taas kaya building ni.
Ayun, dito matikas siya. Hindi, matikas. Hawak ko din eh. Pagod siya. Nalalagan din, umusog. Ninja Street pala ito.
Nandito banda yung
Yung ano?
Atlantic, Aquatic New England Aquarium.
Malamang dito sa June kasi mga aquatic. Kailangan labing lang. Kayo.
Oh, nasa kabila. Sa left side yung Granary Cavern, no? Tavern.
Just Monday's point.
Ano yata?
You're right. Go down. Go ahead.
Bunta pa.
Ito na?
Siya. Yalan siguro. Hanapin. Banda.
I think this is
Ito na aquarium center. Dito tayo. Doon pa yata man. Nay. Ano yata yan? Aquarium yan dyan.
Well, how long will it
Hindi po ang discount ka na. Tsaka yung ano, hope in apple.
Oh.
Long beach na.
Yeah.
Pwede na tayo dito.
Yeah. May ticket na tayo.
The landing at the long, no? Yung binilaan mo.
Yeah, ito.
Anong dito?
Isa lang yata.
May gate. Is the line?
for the 11:30?
Yes.
11:30.
Listen.
We're going on the boat.
I think they're gonna open right now.
Taas ng linya. Ito pinasa Katumoy. Oh. Kalimutan. Ready? Ready ka na? Akit tayo naman. Boat.
Ayok, may toilet sila.
I hope so. Ako din eh. Oh, muna at sakyan nga ko. Boat. Tagal na yung history sightseeing ni. Nindot kayo na pwesto na mo sa taas. Nindot kayo adlaw. Nindot ang pwesto rin mo diya. Ikaw na una. Ha?
Okay. Thank you.
Ready na ka masikog naon. Oh. Beep. Beep.
All aboard. The love boat.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard the Frederick L. Nolan. Welcome to Boston. My name is Mike, and I'll be your narrator for our 60-minute historic harbor cruise. A quick question now that I'm on the outer decks up top and on the stern. Tell me, who's here in Boston? First time ever? Oh, lots of you. Great. Well, welcome. Some of you have been here before, so I'll stick with true stories then. We'll just do that. Do we have any veterans or active duty aboard today? How about visitors from outside the U.S.? Lots of folks. Shout out. Where are you from, folks?
Iceland.
Montreal! We had the bus from Montreal. There are more folks inside. They're from there as well. Yeah, where else? France! Ah, bienvenue! Yes, ma'am. The Philippines. My goodness, now we're going far afield. Colombia.
Ikaw.
One more. Turkey. Toronto. Oh, my goodness. Aruba! Oh,
Okay.
the Divvy, nice hotel.
Taas mo
Good,
kamay
yes.
mo.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Frederick L. Nolan on an international cruise on the historic harbor. My name is Mike, I'll be your narrator. But right now, if I could have your attention, please, the most important thing is to talk about safety. Safety first. This vessel, the Frederick L. Nolan, is a U.S. Coast Guard certified vessel, which means we have life jackets aboard for every one of you. On the outer decks, they're in the large bins. Down below, they're under benches. And in the unlikely event of an emergency, please follow the instructions of the captain and the crew. There is no smoking on board. That includes the use of e-cigarettes. When you use the stairs, please make sure you have at least one hand on the handrail. Remember, we're moving. One hand on the handrail. Likewise, we ask you please don't run on board. If you look around, you realize you're on a boat. And, it's not that big. So why run to get anywhere? Besides, when you trip and fall, there's nothing soft to land on, so save yourself the trouble. Please don't run. Down below on the first deck, that's where you'll find our snack bar and bar. Devin will take good care of you for anything you might like. Go to the bar, turn around to the far end of the vessel, and that's where you'll find our bathrooms. I say it that way all the time because so far I've yet to find passengers who can't find the bar on board. If you stay at the bar, my tour, I understand, gets even better, so I'll leave it to you. The left-hand side of the vessel, the left-hand side is called the port side. We were just right up close to the New England Aquarium at Central Wharf. And they're a wonderful partner. We work with them on a variety of events all throughout the year. But I asked you to look to the right. Look out to the right, called the starboard side. So those of you along the rails that have put your chairs facing the other direction, you're welcome to look that way, but nothing I'll say will make sense. Because we're going to look out this way to the right most of the time, looking out this way. Now, folks, we do have a few more chairs up on the very top deck. If you'd like, you're certainly welcome to come join us. We've got a good family gathering up here. Now we want to ask you to look to the right. Directly off our starboard side is the very end of Long Wharf. And you see the flagpole there? Just make a note of that. I'm going to point that out towards the end of our journey. But now, for those that I can see on the outer decks, tell me, why do we call it Long Wharf? Because it's long. Thank you very much. Who said that?
Nice.
2 gold stars. Both. Absolutely wonderful. It's long. Long Wharf was the longest wharf, not only here in Boston, but on the entire Atlantic seacoast. When it was built over 300 years ago, back in 1710, Long Wharf stood about 1/3 of a mile into Boston Harbor. We could get 50 cargo ships tied up alongside that wharf, loading and unloading as if every single one was on land. And that's why Boston became the desired port for shippers from around the world. Everybody wanted to trade in Boston because it was so easy. Even British Parliament took notice. It was 1764. So 1768, British Parliament voted taxes on all the goods here coming to Boston. They needed to recover treasury expenses for the French and Indian Wars. So they started taxing the goods coming here to Boston, which was a shame. None of us here had any representatives in British Parliament. Nobody to talk to or make suggestions. We were just forced to pay taxes, and you can imagine how well that went over. I'll take a quick look. Yes, absolutely. You still feel the same way, I get it. Take a look to the right for a moment. The masts of the sailboats. In the background is a rusty bridge, which is open. If you look through that opening, you can see a building right smack in the middle of the waterway. There's a cargo ship tied up along that building at Griffin's Wharf. Very important event took place there. You see, we had no representative in Parliament, but we still had to pay taxes. Well, Parliament rescinded most of those taxes, a good thing after a few years, but they left one in place, the tax on British tea. Annoying. We were British citizens here in the colonies. Why should we pay tax on our tea? Well, that day, December 16th, 1773, 3 cargo ships, the Eleanor, the Dartmouth, and the Beaver, were tied up at Griffin's Wharf, all loaded with 92,000 pounds of British tea. And that day, a group of merchants, calling themselves the Sons of Liberty, stormed aboard all 3 vessels, shouting, "No taxation without representation." And they relieved those ships of their cargo of tea. Where did they put all the tea? In the harbor, that's right. Right over the side into Boston Harbor, that's what they did. The king heard about it. He was not amused. He called it the Boston Tea Act. Well, today we know it instead as the Boston Tea Party. There we go. My God. Here, I got a couple more gold stars. Your history teacher will be very proud of you, young lady. That's where the Boston Tea Party took place. Even more important, that's why it took place. Now, to the right is the city of Boston, founded in 1630 by Puritans, looking for religious and political freedom. But to the left of that bridge is south of Boston. That's why we call this all South Boston. You'll catch on to our incredibly complex naming strategy, I just know it. Long Wharf, South Boston. Yeah, you'll get it. All these modern buildings belong to the Seaport District, the fastest growing in the city's history. To the right, in front of the Goodwin Tower, look at the waterfront. There's a small 4-story glass cube-shaped building right there on the water's edge. That's the Institute of Contemporary Art. And when that museum was finished in 2006, that was one of the tallest buildings here in the Seaport District. All these others sprouted up about a decade ago, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But cameras out. Here's a unique selfie. Watch this glass wall of the condo complex. It'll be a mirror. Get your cameras ready. And if you don't have a camera, you can wave. There we are. Nice move. There we go. Pier 4. Pier 4. Years ago, if you said Pier 4, everyone knew there was one thing there. It was a restaurant owned by a man named Anthony. He called it Anthony's Pier 4 Restaurant. He was brilliant. In the 1960s, when he first opened, he invited all the taxi drivers in Boston, come to my restaurant for a free lunch. And where do you think they would suggest a hungry passenger go? Let me take you to Anthony's Pier 4 Restaurant. Good food. I'll take you right there. By the time I met Anthony, when I went there for dinner as a young man, Anthony was still greeting people as they came in for dinner. He was in his late 80s by then. By that time, he'd grown his restaurant so much that it was now the largest grossing restaurant in the United States. He passed away. Pier 4 went to private ownership. It's now condos and a couple businesses. I hope the family will open another restaurant soon. We've just passed by Commonwealth Pier, built in 1912 for the passenger trade, including the transatlantic ocean liners like the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth. Well, right now we have the Boston Fish Pier. It's in Boston. There's fish on the pier. It's a pier. There you go. Now, our fishing fleet here in Boston, they look a lot alike, these vessels, even though they're different sizes. Most of them have a large reel on the stern, the back of the boat. Some of them have two. Wrapped around that reel is a big fishing net. And the way their crews catch fish is they go out to the fishing grounds, they unroll that net off the reel, over the stern, into the water, and they drag it behind them, which is why those are all called stern draggers. I can't make this up. Stern draggers. And our fleet typically sails all the way to George's Bank, about 150 miles offshore. That's one of the most fertile and productive fishing grounds anywhere in the world. They'll bring their catch right back here to the Boston Fish Pier, where everything is weighed and processed and then distributed locally, nationally, even globally. Boston's long been known as a wonderful place for fresh seafood. It's certainly possible this morning's catch could end up on some of your dinner plates later tonight. So once again, welcome to Boston. In the background, that flexible rooftop belongs to the Leader Bank Pavilion, which is an outdoor concert hall. Already planning artists to come entertain audiences here in Boston in the months and years ahead. Well, remember Long Wharf? Suddenly we attracted the world's attention. Shippers wanted to come right here and do business. Boston was a trading city. And over the years, we've grown so much. We ran out of the land that was first here, when we first arrived. We just had to keep building. You know, we needed a little more space and a little more. We built out into the harbor. And we've done so much building out into the harbor that today 75% of our city actually sits on man-made land. Like this long straight rock wall that you see right here. That's man-made. Now look over that wall and over that truck with a red cab. In the background, in your background, is a windowless building with some angled chimneys just a little behind us now. That's one of two ventilation towers for the Ted Williams Tunnel, which connects South Boston on our right, we call it Southie, with East Boston on our left, Eastie. Now that tunnel was built as phase one of our country's largest ever infrastructure project. Around here with all the tunnels, we just called the whole thing the Big Dig. And when the Ted Williams Tunnel was finished in the early 90s, you could now get into a car at Logan International Airport in East Boston, travel through that tunnel, and be at home or at work in the Seaport District of South Boston in less than 15 minutes from a major international airport. Once developers realized that, that's when all those other modern tall buildings sprouted up like tulips in spring in that neighborhood. Now one company even moved all of their people from their old headquarters to a brand new headquarters in the Seaport District, emptying out the old headquarters which was on the other side of Boston. They just needed better access to Logan Airport. Speaking of which, there's a JetBlue taking off from Logan Airport, passing left to right over our bow. back here off to the right-hand side, behind the black building directly off to our right, you can see in the background there's a very long 8-story white building. It's so long we can't see both ends of that building in any one place along the waterfront anymore. That was built in 1910 as the South Boston Army Barracks and Warehouse. Back then, it was the longest building in the world. Yeah, longest building in the world for 3 months. It all worked out. We got a plaque. 3 months later, the next longest building in the world, they got a plaque. Everyone's happy. Today, that's home to many companies, including Reebok, Toys for Tots, and America's Test Kitchen, just to name a few. But don't turn around and look over at the airport for the moment, because what I'm going to tell you was there before the airport was. The airport's only been there since 1926. Back in the 1600s, that was just more water, more Boston Harbor. But there were 3 islands over on our left-hand side way back then. Our first governor, Governor Winthrop, built his house on one of those islands, which is why we called it from then on Governor's Island. Long Wharf, South Boston, Governor, right? He missed his favorite drink in England, which was apple cider, because apple trees were not native here in North America. They didn't grow, not in the 1600s. But he was not bothered at all. He ordered an apple orchard, shipped right on over, planted all those apple trees on the island right next to him. So once again, he could enjoy cider here on this side of the Atlantic. From then on, with all those apple trees on the island, we called that island Apple Island. I knew you'd be catching on. Look at that. John Chapin, a young man born and raised in Leominster, which is a city about an hour's drive northwest of Boston. He had the great idea to plant apple trees across the country. So he came to Boston Harbor's Apple Island, collected lots and lots of seeds, and set out across the country to do just that. There goes a jet. There's one right overhead. Good. I don't see anything leaking from that jet, so it's going to be a good day. John Chapin planted apple trees all the way to Washington State. He earned his nickname, which we know of as Johnny Appleseed. Right, there you go.
Appleseed.
The third island over there was home to birds, and that's why we called that island Bird Island. I knew you'd catch on. All good. All 3 of those islands today buried under 2,400 acres of Logan International Airport. I'll talk more about that on our way back when it'll be off to our right-hand side. You don't have to turn around. Once again, to our right, a little behind us, is a pier with a 3-story tan building on it. All that for the jet. All right, all of you on the top deck, any of you ever want to know what the underside of a jet looks like? There's another box on your bucket list to check off. So once again, off to our right, that 3-story tan building points to an even longer 3-story white building. It's over half a mile long. Forms the Flynn Cruise Ship Terminal, where today's cruise ships come to Boston. The tallest is so big you can see the superstructure above that 8-story building we just talked about. And across the waterway is the Connolly Freight Terminal with all these containers stacked up. And look, we have a container ship, one of the Evergreen family. They make some of the very largest container ships on the seas. The largest plowing the seas today can carry more than 12,000 of those 40-foot long containers in one trip. But you'll notice we use these low-profile cranes. Sometimes planes fly right over this cargo terminal to land on the runway, literally right close to the other side of the harbor. So they're flying low and slow. Pilots don't like tall things between them and their runway they're trying to land on. But back where that Evergreen ship is, there are 2 cranes that are taller than all the others, and those are indeed the world's tallest low-profile cranes. It's like me saying I'm the tallest man on board, under 6 feet. And those cranes allow us to handle these much bigger Supermax container ships. George Lucas, the filmmaker, looked at the cranes from this angle years ago. He was inspired to create the AT-AT, the Imperial Walkers, in his second Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back. You'll recognize that shape here. And to the right of the cranes, the 3 tall buildings in Boston, 3.5. The one in the middle with the antenna is the Prudential Tower, our second skyscraper. The one to the right, the green slab, was built in the 1970s as the headquarters for the John Hancock Insurance Company. the tallest in all of New England, 60 stories. But they were all surprised when they finished the building that the winds in Boston were stronger than they anticipated, and the winds blew out a number of those glass panes. It forced them to replace every single one of those glass panels on all 60 stories. The insurance company executives then decided to sue the original window installers for those extra costs. And that's when they learned that they were insured by the John Hancock Insurance Company. Still, my favorite true story here in Boston. They settled out of court. Now, to our right, we're approaching this lovely little bit of land here. There's a fort, there's a monument. I'll talk about the monument in a bit. This is Castle Island, originally named for Castle William, the first fort built here, and it was indeed an island. It was water from here all the way back to the Tea Party location, Griffin's Wharf. Today you see Fort Independence, dates from the 1840s. That fort has never fired a shot in anger. It's a wonderful museum today, and as you can see, people still come out for recreation to Castle Island, especially now. They don't need a boat to get here. You can just walk all the way from Boston. That monument between us and the fort was dedicated to a famous shipwright named Donald Mackay. I'll tell you his story a little later on our voyage. Just past Castle Island, to the right of the sun's glare, we can see all the way down Dorchester Bay to the great blue hills of Massachusetts. Those antennas on the hilltop belong to WGBH, our public radio and TV station. The call sign letters came from W, Great Blue Hills, GBH. Now in view about halfway down Dorchester Bay, you can see colorful stripes on a gas tank. The tallest trademark artwork today since Sister Corita Kent painted the rainbow swash back in the 1970s. And a little closer to us, just over the gazebo at the end of the causeway, the black and white building on Columbia Point is the John F. Kennedy Memorial Library, honoring our 35th American president. I'll mention the JFK Library later on in our tour. As we now make our turn here, we've got a great view of the outer Boston Harbor, and you can see some of the 34 islands that make up the Boston Harbor Islands National Park. The one immediately to our right and closest to us looks like two great big hills. I'm going to come back and talk about that island because it's changed immensely. But I want you to look straight out to the horizon. Between two clumps of trees, way off in the distance, you can see a white candle smack dab in the middle of the beach. That is Boston Light. Boston Light. It's not a beer, it's a lighthouse. And that stands on the foundation of the first lighthouse ever built on this side of the Atlantic. The first Boston Light built right there in 1716. Now that lighthouse, well, that's much younger. That's only been guiding ships in and out of Boston Harbor since 1783. And her beacon visible every 10 seconds, some 27 miles out to sea. And as we continued our turn, I'm sure many of you noticed those large egg-shaped buildings over there on Deer Island. They're a little behind us now to the right. Deer Island, of course, Dan, when they set foot on the island, they found a large herd of deer. There you go. Yes, indeed. Well, Deer Island played an important role in our harbor history, as did the island right behind us, the one I first mentioned. Today, it's the tallest island in the harbor, but when they first came here in the 1600s, it was the lowest island, barely above high tide, where two little drumlins connected with a sandy causeway. From above, it looked like a gentleman's eyeglasses, or what we called back then, spectacles. And now, with our creative naming strategies, we named that island Spectacle Island. There you go. In the 1700s, that island was used as a site for a quarantine hospital. Sick people and those treating them were on the island, 4 miles away from the healthy folks in the city. That worked out really well. In the late 1800s, Boston had founded a horse rendering plant on that island, providing hides and glue for the leather district on shore. That's a good thing it was out here, but I can tell you, since they're very smelly operations, when there was a strong onshore wind blowing from the ocean towards Boston, everybody in the city knew there was a horse rendering plant out in the harbor. But all that changed in 1910, when Boston now decided to bring their trash by barge to Spectacle Island, and they began to pile it up there for the next 49 years, stacking it as high as 85 feet in places. And what do you think happened to a lot of the trash when the Boston winds blew strongly? Where did it end up? In the harbor, that's right. All that trash in Boston Harbor, it made it a mess. And we had a unique way of dealing with all that mess in Boston Harbor. We ignored it. Here we have Korean Air taking off right across our bow, right to left. Yes, we knew the harbor was filthy with all that trash. Well, it wasn't until the 1980s, during another presidential election. Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts was one candidate for the presidency. His opponent ran a very clever ad, a television ad that went nationwide. It was about 60 seconds worth of live images of Boston Harbor and all its inkiness. The only words spoken: if Governor Michael Dukakis can't clean up Boston Harbor, how can he ever clean up the rest of the country? Which is why we did not have a President Michael Dukakis. The citizens of Boston, however, were now outraged and embarrassed that little tiny towns across the country knew of Boston as a dirty harbor city instead of a harbor with so many other wonderful things. So the citizens of Boston sued their governors and government and won. To clean up the harbor, a federal judge ordered the city to build all those structures on Deer Island, including those large egg-shaped buildings that we can still see now a little bit behind us to our right. All those structures today are part of the Deer Island wastewater treatment plant. Even today, the second largest in the nation, only behind Detroit's. On a daily basis, that plant processes the wastewater from Boston and 43 surrounding communities, well over 400 million gallons every day. Those tall egg-shaped buildings, and yes, there are a dozen of those egg-shaped buildings, are called sludge digesters. Microscopic organisms munching through zillions of gallons of our waste as we speak. The treated waters from that plant, I'm told, are as clean and clear as drinking water. In fact, if you tour their plant, they'll even give you samples. I just take their word for it. Those just ahead of us and to the left is a wonderful view of the city of Boston. Feel free, if you'd like, to come into any of the outer decks along the rail, take some pictures of the city in this wonderful morning sunlight. And once again, I'll be back in a few moments to continue our narration. Thank you for joining us. Back soon. Past the airport, Hyatt Regency Hotel. In the background of this little cove, you see a long red roof, which is today the new roof to Terminal E of Logan International Airport. For centuries. Now, light shift crew members typically serve 3 weeks on duty, miles from anywhere, going absolutely nowhere. To pass the time, they brought their hobbies on board. Many in the 1800s brought basket weaving as their hobby of choice, even inventing a brand new basket while on board, called today, surprisingly, Nantucket Light Shift Basket. You Google it to find the unique shapes. You can find them in many places today. But those from the 1800s only made on board ship by those sailors on duty. Boston Harbor. The city built the wharf, developers built the condo. They would pump the water from the airport all the way up to this 16-story apartment building roof. All filled in.
Ada? Yeah.
Many families and the neighborhoods. The condos are typically built. They are Donald McKay, like that monument you saw on Castle Island. That's where Donald McKay, from one end to the other, most of it crossing land, not water. Those of us that commute over that bridge, I can tell you from my own personal experience, it's earned its local nickname, the world's longest parking lot. Ask me how I know. This side of the bridge, everything along the shoreline is part of the old Charlestown Navy Yard, second oldest from 1800 to 1973. Today we've got a small portion of our museum, which is rapidly approaching. As we do so, look for the tall granite obelisk on the hillside, the Bunker Hill Memorial. In the early days of the American Revolution, the British saw the local militia gathered on the waterfront here in Charlestown. They thought, if we capture these hills above, we can shoot down on them. But the word got out instead, and the local militia was ordered to Bunker Hill. See, according to the British maps, this hill closer to us, this was Bunker Hill, but the maps were wrong. We went to where the church steeple is, because we didn't need a British map. We knew where Bunker Hill was. But realized this hill, Breed's Hill, closer to the harbor, is what the British were really after. So they came over here in the morning of June 17th, 1775. The British discovered all that construction work. That day they sent some 2,200 regular British Army soldiers to muster at the base of Breed's Hill for a frontal assault.
Sa Boston pala yan.
The local militia had no such plans of giving up the hill. With limited ammunition and no reinforcements, they ordered their troops, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. And they made every shot count. The British took 3 tries to capture the hill, but they lost half their troops, about 1,100 casualties. So many, the British general wrote, with victories like these, we'll soon lose this war. That is why the Bunker Hill Memorial stands on Breed's Hill. That's where the Battle of Bunker Hill was actually fought. Off to the right here at our museum site, the World War II Fletcher-class destroyer, the USS Cassin-Young, 793. It reminds us of all the ships built and repaired in Navy yards across the country. But now, folks, in full view, here we have the jewel of the harbor. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the USS Constitution. She is the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world. The oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world. She was built right here in Boston in 1797 as one of the first of 6 ships, frigates, that became the beginnings of our U.S. Navy. She won her famous nickname during the War of 1812. Oh, take a moment and watch the monument through the rigging, capture a picture of this if you'd like. I'll tell you why in a moment. During the War of 1812 off Nova Scotia, she encountered the HMS Guerriere, and in the brief battle that followed, crew members saw British cannonballs bouncing off her hull. Huzzah, one shouted, her sides are made of iron. And that's where the nickname Old Ironsides came from. But she's not iron, but wood. 22-inch thick Georgia live boat. After she sunk the Guerriere in 35 minutes, they counted 19 British cannonballs embedded in her hull. And to remain a commissioned warship in the United States Navy, yes, she's still actively served by active duty officers and crew members. She sails a couple of times during the summer months with the help of a tug. She goes out to Castle Island, fires a 21-gun salute to Fort Independence, and then returns to her berth facing the other direction, so her hull will weather evenly the following year. You noted the monument through the rigging of the Constitution? Well, that was the design inspiration for Phase 3 of our big dig. This wonderful bridge to our right is now heading more towards behind us as we continue our turn. This is the Leonard P. Zakin Bunker Hill Bridge, completed in 2003, the widest cable-stayed bridge in the world at that time. Still carries 10 lanes of traffic over the Charles River, the other freshwater river emptying here into the head of the harbor. Just to the left of the bridge, of course, the TD Garden is our sports arena for the Boston Bruins hockey team and the Boston Celtics basketball team, the 2024 NBA champions. Thank both of you Celtics fans on board. We really appreciate you coming out today. To the left of the stadium is where the 10-lane tunnel begins. That's Phase 2 of our big dig. It replaced a double-decker highway that cut right through the waterfront. Today, above the tunnel is a lovely open space. Now unites the harbor and the waterfront right back to the city. To the right we have the Old North End, the oldest neighborhood in Boston. Today considered the Italian neighborhood with more than 100 Italian restaurants and many pastry shops in those narrow streets. Folks, I will tell you, they are all worth a visit. But please pace yourself. The tree-lined hillside just between these brick buildings is Copp's Hill. That's the only remaining of the original 3 hills Shawmut Peninsula. This has been a burying ground since 1659. And if you look just above the rooftops, there in the near background, you can see the white church steeple of the Old North Church, the oldest in the city, from 1723. Just over 300 years old. Made even more famous with Longfellow's poem. Remember the poem, The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere? The lines, one if by land, two if by sea. The code. When the British ordered their troops to muster on the banks of the Charles River on the night of April 18, 1775, beginning their quest to capture our powder and munitions of Lexington and Concord. As the British troops marched past the church, the sexton hung 2 lanterns in that steeple, indicating they were taking the water route to Lexington and Concord, crossing the river, rather than the land route, which was to the west and a bit longer. Many people saw those 2 lanterns, including Paul Revere, who was right nearby. A new message there is, grab your musket and join the fight. Paul Revere rushed across the waters, borrowed a horse in Charlestown, and he took off into the night, warning everyone he could with the famous words that I was taught in school, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" But that was wrong. You see, in 1775, we were all still British. So no one's getting out of bed, that's for sure. Instead, he more likely shouted, "The regulars are coming out," or "The redcoats are coming out." A much different message. Grab your musket, join the fight, and many did. The very next morning at dawn, April 19, 1775, the British troops arrived at Lexington Common and fired on the Minutemen there. An action we call today, the shot heard round the world, the first battle of the American Revolution. I told you that story as we're passing by the Boston base of the United States Coast Guard, right here at Constitution Hill, where the USS Constitution was actually built. The Coast Guard is still the one branch of military service primarily tasked with saving lives. The white hulls typically used in search and rescue. Black hulls are workboats like tugs and buoy tenders. Gray and orange are harbor patrols. The motto of the Coast Guard, Semper Paratus, means always ready. Next we have Battery Wharf, right here to our right. Site of a battery of cannon that guarded the north end and the Charles River beyond. This was also the departure point for the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first free African-American regiment to fight during the American Civil War of the 1860s. That story is very well told in the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman. Next, Burroughs Wharf, tied up alongside the John S. Damrell fireboat, headquarters of the Harbor Division for the Boston Fire Department. That fireboat, like every other on the water, is ready to go at a moment's notice, just like a fire engine on land. Ready to go if there's a fire like from the water. And look at these wharves. You can see a walking trail come up one side of the wharf, across the end, down the other, and it leads up to the next one, and the next, and the next. And this is a good example of the Boston Harbor Walk, which goes all the way around the harbor. It actually begins at the JFK Memorial Library, right down Dorchester Bay. If you walk along the waterfront there, up to Castle Island, and kept going through South Boston and all of Boston, Charlestown, Chelsea, and East Boston to the airport, you walk that trail on 46 miles all around Boston Harbor. Except no access at the Coast Guard base, or to our right at Union Wharf, the lovely brick townhomes on it. Union Wharf has been privately owned since 1850. The only way to get to the water's edge at Union Wharf is if you own one of those townhomes, or better yet, you know someone else who does. Zillow suggests one of those townhomes would go on the market today for something like $3.5 million. I think that works out to perhaps $500,000 for the townhome, and then only $3 million to the parking places. All the Seaport District of Water was 50 years ago. Red asphalt parking lots. Now you're going Bostonian. Now you're just like everybody else. To our right, we've got a great view of the waterfront and all of the financial district downtown Boston. Close to us are 3 long buildings, once for warehouses. The brick building is Sergeant's Wharf, the granite building with the iron balcony, followed by the brick and granite building, Commercial Wharf. today mostly residences with great views of the harbor and the city beyond. Now look past Commercial Wharf over the marina in the background, in the shadows, right above the treetops of Columbus Park. There is the cream cupola and the gold dome of Faneuil Hall, where our forefathers met in secret to plan the revolution. There's some better views of Waterloo, or Cradle of Liberty. And just in front of that, in the shadows, the broad green hopper known as Quincy Market, was open-air market in the nation. In the 1840s, today a food court with shops behind the shop. The tall building with the clocks near the top is our first skyscraper, the Boston Custom Company. The base building, built in 1849, the original proposed then the shoreline edge. The tower added in 1914, the tallest in Boston for 50 years. Now, cameras out. Here's a very close shot. We only have seconds to look at it. Find the flagpole at Long Wharf. Watch as it lines up with a black skyscraper. Right above the traffic lights is another brick building with a cream cupola and a gold dome. There it is in the shadows, all the way back there. That is the old Boston State House. The old Boston State House. Now fear not, if you miss that, there's another chance. When you disembark, just walk down to the flagpole, less than a minute, and then turn around and look. And you'll see the old Boston State House right up there. That State House was built right there on the original shore of the Shawmut Peninsula, and also at the very beginning of Long Wharf, which was completed just 3 years earlier. From the old State House to the flagpole is the original length of Long Wharf, as it was built in 1710. 1,586 feet. Long Wharf. Today, you see what's happened. We've been growing so much as a commercial port, we've just been filling in the land on either side of the wharf for current shoreline. Folks, thanks. You can leave the chairs where they are. Don't even worry. That's appreciated about. Well, there was a terrible thing, though, that took place at the old State House. Remember those Parliament taxes, 1768? Well, by March of 1770, we still weren't very happy about that. During that month, a group of citizens gathered outside the old State House, started to bother one of the sextons, the sentries, that is, on duty. He called up reinforcements, and more townsfolk kept joining the crowd. Tensions rose. Here's the thing. Nobody knows exactly what happened next. We think perhaps a building or a shed or a car, something caught fire. We do know somebody clearly shouted the word fire. Just like we do today. You see something burning, you call attention to it that way, try to get everyone within earshot, put it out, or it burns the place to the ground. The sentries already on high alert, they heard that word too. They thought it was a command from their superior officer. It was not. The order was never given. But nonetheless, those sentries followed their training, they lowered their rifles, and they fired into that Boston crowd, ultimately killing 5 people. Paul Revere wrote up an article describing that whole event. He published it in the local paper shortly thereafter under the headline, Boston Massacre. Those 2 words echoed throughout all of our colonies, and people began to think long.
Ito, hindi wala nga shop, $10 lang naman.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I jumped on the ice and like broke it.
Doon marami nga, panigurado po Quincy. Yun tayo. Kung man na tayo cruising tour at na sa Quincy Market Food Hall. Nangita tagkan ilawan natong Boston food. Sa kay maayong tilawan dito. Mungita ta. Ha. Hanap tayo ng sarap na pagkain. Parang gutom na naman ako na ito. Tapos
yung
ng ano.
scorpion, tingin mo, lobster mo.
Kain muna tayo. Baka iba na naman tingin ko sa carousel na yan. Ano na yan?
Bird yan, no?
Anong tawag na?
Marketplace to.
Marketplace. Dito tayo. Nakita tayo. Dito. Dapit ang Filipino restaurant. Nangarimig hapon. Sarado man.
Here's a carrot. Saan yung Quincy?
Wala, may ano din sila dito. Waga mama. Yan, Quincy Market, no? Quincy Market.
Ayun yung nasa YouTube.
Oh. One is Quincy Market. Food hall.
Magpaloko. Mahal daw kung
This is okay. Yes, mga ako na sa sige, tilaw ka natin. Excited ako na. Ha? Excited ka? Gaon ta. Woo!
Yeah, that's what it is. No, siyempre.
Boston. Candies. The Naughty Waffle. Prime shop. So gone na din.
Sampul.
Oh, lamig ka rin. Hotdog, fries, chicken. Look, cheese fries. Sorry. Should I? Falcon. Oh, steak and cheese sauce. This looks good. The shrimps. Wow, it looks juicy. Pero, go muna tayo. But this one is good. No, this is Boston Halal. Indian, Mediterranean.
Yes, please.
Pinamudol.
Ang katulad sa inahanap.
The wicked lobster.
Ayun, tingnan mo yun.
Sure.
Traditional ramen or
More
please?
hot lobster roll special.
Yung picture.
And a bottle of Coke Zero.
Yeah, ganon. Chowder na ano, nasa bread. Mac and cheese. taas kayo na kami pagkaon.
Masyado.
Ha?
Walang pupunta kay gluten free.
Sushi. Noodle soup.
Yeah, but we'll walk back that way from no season. We'll go up to this. Yeah, but it could be now.
There's an ATM really close.
The North End Bakery. That's all right. Tayo dito. Yeah. Sa labas tayo na lang kaya. Ikot lang tayo dito. Ikot lang ba? Yeah. Okay. Ikot lang muna tayo.
Follow me.
Face painting. Come over here. No, I don't even know if I don't know if
But I did good too. What did you
Boston Powder. Hey, both guys take a bite.
Gusto talaga, pipila.
Oo. Ito, dun, noodles and rice.
The noodle and rice.
Naman pala.
I call your name sign. This is how you get a giant cheer from all the people. You're gonna run. Stand right here. turn around in a circle one time and do not touch.
Puno nga to eh. Hindi wala man tayo pupistohan pagkaon. Mangita ang taglayang restaurant. Puno kayo.
Ako magsintas ng ano ko.
Okay doon, may ingat dyan ha, salt. Slippery.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage of the following weeks, all the way from America. Get up!
Cheers!
Grandma, I need to tell you this. All of your grandchildren are both following.
Tingin ka.
Did you park in this garage? No. Did you see how bad some people park? There was at least 3 cars that were at least.
Punta tayo doon.
Hindi. Sinasabi ko lang sa'yo.
Ano?
Ano nang gagawin natin?
Punta tayo doon?
Ano?
Malakad tayo doon. Punta tayo doon. Malakad tayo doon baka may
I wanna go to the house.
Ano yung banda? Sobrang sikat kasi ito. Ha? YouTube.
The side that we were eating at, right?
Try natin yung ano.
Yun.
Nandito lang yung Filipino restaurant.
Yan,
Baka
dito
bukas
na
sila.
lang. Baka bukas.
Tingnan lang natin. Pwede tayo dito dadaan. Para maganda. Yeah. Hindi kasi yung wagamama siguro.
Yung barbecue na lalagay mo sa
Yeah.
naluluto na sila ng pork.
Pick on you and I'll let you do
Ito yung Fini Wall Marketplace.
I can see what you look like.
Ito ng tao. Tingin ka?
Yan, pag ganyan, ibig sabihin na wala naman talaga. Ah,
Yung nga.
tama hindi ba?
Mm.
Bakit lang ba? Namin mo lang.
Yeah. Ito salesman na to, tanongin natin kung bibigyan tayo ng magandang discount sa ano, trolley. Trolley tour.
Sharking for a while, but nothing.
Ano?
Ah,
Tapos liko na tayo dito banda. Kasi alam ko nandito lang yung banda. Hanapin ko? Okay. May ano? Dito. So,
tawag tayo.
yeah.
Ayun.
Sa ano? Yung face, ano ba yun? Confirmation ba?
Ha?
Yung face ano, confirmation ba? Sa akin, hindi mo makukuha. Sa'yo, makuha ko, sabihin ko lang sa mukha ni Cody. Tawag ko, Cody.
Ginawa mo na?
Mabuksan ko yung phone mo. Hindi, pag ano, bibili ka ng phone kasi wala ka pang face ano eh. Bili ka ba ang phone? Tawagin ka, Cody, cover. And then open.
Matangos ang ilim ni Cody kaysa.
I will try next time. I will show you. I will show you. Sa akin, wala. Nakita ko yung sa TikTok eh. Nag-work sa baby pa niya anak. Lalaki naman yun, lalaki.
Ito?
Ah.
Yun yung ginagawa.
Ah. Ayan, may siguro nila ilaw na yun. Pag wala, dito tayo sa Nico Ramen. Ha? Pag sarado. Ooh, it's ramen. We like ramen, ha? Di ba? Yo. Kaya siguro nagsira-sara lang maaga kahapon. Ay, ingay. May ginagawa. Alala mo? Ah, yan o, may nakalagay open. Oo, makita mo yan?
Yeah. Connected.
Yung open? Yung ilaw. Loh, palit ng ano. Car.
Yes, sabihin ko, Cody, dahil siya mag-practice ka na, ganyan mo.
Pero hindi tayo dyan sa Claymore Bumi, ha? Ha?
Kaya natin
No.
Yan ang ginagawa ng Pilipino sa atin. Kahit wala namang Pilipino po. Naman na Pilipino doon. Ah,
Yeah. Pwede tayo rin sa flavor bomb.
nice.
What is this flavor?
Yung inaanoan na kapalilan ng grupo pa.
Parang pupuntahan naman.
Puntahan sila kasi yung Pilipino.
May halo-halo sila. Oh, I want halo-halo. Lumpiang Shanghai. Halo-halo, wala. Halika. Bukas. May halo-halo. May dinuguan, okay.